Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for the introduction. And again, if you don't already know, my name is Erica, and I am from Enjoy Erica Art Studio. I am bringing to you today this lovely piece of art inspired by Helen Zughaib. So in honor of National Arab American Heritage Month, I have a few reasons why you should know Helen Zughaib and her art and why it's important to the Arab American history. So for her, cultural representation is very important. Helen Zughaib's art vividly depicts Arab American experiences, providing a platform for cultural visibility and understanding. She has her work delve into themes of identity, bridging the gap between Arab heritage and American society, crucial during the Arab American History Month. Zughaib's art often addresses social and political issues, sparking important conversations about Arab American perspectives and challenges. Through her art, Zughaib captures moments in Arab American history, preserving narratives that might otherwise be overlooked. And ultimately, her art tries to inspire other Arab Americans to embrace their heritage and empower them to contribute to the cultural fabric of the United States. So this one, we have this is an actual almost replica to the T of one of her works. And as you can see, you see themes of cultural identity. This person here is wearing a hijab, and she is set in front of this kind of muted, colorful background. So we're going to sketch this out, and in order to do so, you'll need a few things. I'm working with some watercolors here. I have a pencil with an eraser. I have some black Sharpie, magic markers, permanent markers, alcohol markers. I have a cup with water and a liner brush. A liner brush, you don't need something too big. You can use a thinner liner brush. You could use a quarter-inch flat brush as well, but this one will do just fine. And then we have, of course, our watercolors and a ruler to get these lines straight. And then anytime that you're working with watercolors, you also want to keep some paper towels handy. So why don't we just go ahead and get started? All right. So I'm just going to move this stuff out of the way for a moment. And the sketch is fairly simple. We're going to get started. I have my piece of paper here, and I'm going to use my ruler. If you don't have a ruler, just take 2 fingers and try to use another edge of piece of paper to draw a straight line. But I'm going to cheat a little bit here today and do a bit of a straight line. And it's literally just the width of the ruler. I'm just going on the left side here. Just move that over to the other side. And another bit of straight line work over here. And then you want to kind of have a line coming straight down. You don't want it too center. You kind of want it off center. So I'm going to use my picture here to kind of gauge the size, but really it's about 4 fingers wide, and I'm going to put a dot from that line to 4 fingers at the top. And I'm going to come down here, measure about 4 fingers, and come directly to the bottom. And now you have yourself 2 dots to connect like so. So we'll go ahead and connect there. And then I'm going to do the same thing about another 4 fingers. Place a dot here, 4 fingers, a dot there. And then we'll make our way to connecting the 2. So far we're starting out with a ruler on one side, traced and straight, ruler sized on the other side. And then we have 4 fingers in between, and then we're going to start working across with these other lines. So for this first section, if we look here at our sample, that is about 3 fingers. So I'm going to use 3 fingers and place a dot here on this first line. So just to see a little bit better, we have 3 fingers and I'm placing a dot here. And then I'm going to come to this second line. So we have 1 here. This second line, I'm going to take my 3 fingers and place a dot here. And we're going to connect the dots. So that is that first level. It's going straight across. And you want to kind of lightly do it because we are going to sketch over this area a bit. But that's that line. And it's just covering these 2 spaces. And then we have this area here. That's going to be 2 spaces as well. So I'm going to measure, this is about 2 fingers down from this line. So I'm going to take 2 fingers down and then just gauge a dot here. And then I'm just going to kind of move it across. So just parallel. And then we'll make these about 1 finger's width. So I'm drawing a dot here and a dot here. So I want, from this dot here, I placed 2 fingers and then drew a dot, drew a corresponding dot across the way right there. Then I measured out 1 more finger to place another dot. Then I'm going to draw another corresponding dot there. Then lastly, I have this 3rd dot. So you should see 6 in total, 3 here and 3 here. And now we're just going to connect the dots. So using our ruler, starting with the first line, doesn't have to be perfect, but we'll try our best to lightly go across. And again, lightly go across. And lastly, go across. And that is creating this area here. So far, so good, right? All right, so now we're going to start sketching. So we're going to use these squares to help us with our sample image. And we can get started kind of taking over this corner of the square. So that's going to be a little bit of an angle. And we're going to take that angle all the way down. We're going to come about halfway. So about halfway, I'm going to stop. I'm going to mark about halfway and then just pull it off with a little bit of a curve. So we filled out this little corner here, and then we came down at an angle, and now we have it coming off a little bit more than halfway. So this is about halfway, so just a little bit further down than halfway. Now we're going to take this sketch and kind of round it out in this part. So this part's going to get a little bit of a curve. So we're going to come up with a soft sketch and lift it up and slowly start to curve it down. And there you have the top of the head. And then moving down, we want to come to this dot right here. So this line is going to find itself connected to this line over here. And then we're going to fill in the face and oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. We forgot this line over here. This line's going to go straight across too. So we're going to extend this line straight over here. Fill that in. And there's a little bit of something happening there. Perfect. So now we're going to fit in the face. The face kind of starts right where these 3 corners meet, and it's literally just an oval. So I'm just going to sketch an oval, leaving a little bit of gap at the top. And I'm just coming around. And sketching out my oval. Just like so. So we have our oval in, and then I'm going to remove any of the lines that are being overlapped. So that means these lines here are going to be erased because we are overlapping that. We're going to then erase these lines here so we can start designing the face. And these lines here, stopping at this square. So once we get to this square, we leave it with the line, but we want to remove all of those type surrounding right here. Perfect. Moving right along. So once that's complete, we'll work on the eyes. So if you see our picture here, the line kind of follows right under the eyes. So this is going to be right under the eyes. You want to kind of start the eyes a little bit above. So just to give you an idea, we'll start off with an eyebrow. And that's just a very slight line, not even as elevated as that. It's just a little bit of a curve. And on the other side, a little bit of a curve as well. And it's a little bit shorter than here. So this one, it almost gets pushed towards the right of the outside, almost touching. Not quite, but almost. And then we'll bring that down to start creating the nose. Now, the nose is fairly long, comes a little bit more than halfway of the oval. So I'm going to gauge that this is a little bit more than halfway. And I want to make it the same width. So I'm just putting some dots so I know not to pass those dots when I use my line. I just want to kind of continue that eyebrow down, straight down to about there. Continue this eyebrow straight down to about here. And then if you look at this reference picture, the nose is kind of shaped very abstract-like. So we're going to continue a curve here. So from the right, we're going to round it up and almost make like a very slight hill under there. And then we're going to work our way around that line. So let me give you a close-up of what I did. So we kind of came down with this eyebrow, straight all the way down, curved it, and then came around the next line. Then the next line after that, we're going to kind of move it in a little bit. So I'm going to softly sketch some straight lines here and here. And these are just those lines at the top of the lip. In between there, I'm going to create two tops of the lip. So you want it very U-shaped in between these two lines. And then we'll come down and round the mouth out just with a simple curve. And then the line for the lip, if you look at the sample, it's not completely straight across. It does have a little bend to it. So you almost mimic where this little curve is. You kind of want to bend along with it also. So just a slight little bend. You just don't want it to go straight across. And then back to our sample. Our eyes are very almost cartoonish, and they're not very big. So we just want to keep these rounded lines kind of long so that it almost looks like an almond shape. And we want to repeat those on both sides. So just a curve and then a curve. And then the lid is very thin on the left and almost not seen on the right. So we have two lids. And then we'll draw a circle that doesn't end to fill in the eye shape, like so. And then last but not least, we're going to come across the face and kind of create an angle across the face for this geometric blue shape. Let me double check with my sketch here. So as you can see with this part, it comes down. So we bring that line down. And then just want to double check that that is our sketch. So we do have these sections built out here. That's correct. We have the eyes, the nose, the lips, the blue detail. We have everything else ready to go. We have this line here, and that's our sketch. So that's what we have drawn. This is our sample page. Next, we're going to pull out our markers or our crayons. Right now, I have some watercolors. It's going to take 2 layers of watercolor. So I have my little snazzy kit here. I have my liner brush and a cup of water. And I'm just going to start swiping into some red colors. I'm just dipping in the water. And working with red first. I'm working my way from the top to the bottom. And then just retracing my steps. So using that red to go up against these drawn pencil lines. And really take my time when I pull into the edges like so. And just saturating and pulling across just like so. And just moving around my sketch lines. And just continue to fill in. So with watercolor, you definitely want to not be afraid to come back with more water so that your paint looks more pigmented. So the more water that you mix into the palette and that it sits on top of the color, the thicker the pigment is. But if you move your color to another space and add more water, it becomes more opaque. So this is just layering and just pulling the color across like so. And there we have the red. Now the next color that I want to start is this yellow. And again, if you make a mistake with watercolor, it's very easy to correct it. You just need some paper towels and you just press straight down. And then if you're bold and daring like myself, you know, you just are always around paint. So you don't worry too much about getting some on your hands. So we have some yellow here. We're going to get into this little section, this top first thin block. I just love this style when she's very selective with her color palette. And then she uses these geometric, inspirational kind of backgrounds. And there we have our yellow. Next section is going to be this section towards the bottom left. So we'll go ahead and clean our brush with a swirl and a tap. Let's get into some blue. This one's looking like a cerulean blue. So we wanted a hair darker than a cerulean blue. Want some real navy tone going. So I'm going to swipe against this navy and the cerulean. And there we are. This one. I'm just pulling the brush across the edge. I'm coming here. And don't be too worried that if your line is not straight, we will be covering all of our drawn sketch lines with some marker and a nice big black harsh outline. All right, we're just moving along and just retracing our steps and then using the color to fill in. A little bit of that navy, a little bit of that cerulean, and a few swipes and you are in business. Just swiping across. Trying to limit the brush strokes as much as possible. We don't want it to be too texturized. We want it to have a plain looking aesthetic where we're not noticing too much texture. We just want to see the bulk of the color. So we're just swiping back and forth. And that's what the second coat of the watercolor is going to give us, that smooth look. Alrighty. And then we're going to take a lighter bit of blue. So this is going to be a little bit more of a watered down version. So I'm going to use this watered down blue for the face. And I'm just going to get into all these little kind of spaces. And I love the simplicity of this piece too. I love how she conveys that the person is wearing a hijab with very minimal line work. Okay, next color, next area that we'll be working on is this black color. Couple of swipes, and we're in business. Wet my brush and swipe around. So we don't want these colors to look gray. And sometimes with black, it's not a true tone of black. It can seemingly look gray depending on how watered down it is. So that's why we do the first initial coat, and then we can always come back and fill it in. Because as you can see, that looks very gray, but is in fact a black color. So that's why we'll just go through it with the first layer, let that dry a moment, and come in with the second layer. You can take your time. There is no rush. And you want to slowly move around the roundness of the face. And then just keep going on top. Here it starts to look a little darker. And a little more water. And round we go. So really just trying to get to the edge as close as possible without touching the whiteness of the face. You want to keep that negative space as white as possible. Just moving through like so. Coming into some more black. And then just retracing steps like so. And just continue adding water to the color and just pulling the paint across, filling in, and we'll let it dry a moment. You can also use a fan or a blow dryer to speed the drying process, but watercolor dries fairly quickly. You just want to be mindful not to put too much water when you are applying your color. You don't want the paper drenched so that if you lifted it up, the paint would start dripping. So that's a good rule of thumb when working with watercolor. Don't put too much that if you tilted the paper up, the paint would start dripping. Okay, so we do have that gray effect happening here, which is why we're going to let that black have a chance to dry. And with a little swish and tap around my cup here, we're going to step back into a little bit of red, get that red really popping and smooth looking. So round two, filling in that red. Moving right along. Okay, red is good. A little swirl. And we have some yellow on deck. Get some yellow in the second coat. Just like so. Alrighty. Back to that nice navy blue. With a touch of cerulean. And we're filling in the bottom. Making that happen. Swiping a little more water and on to the next one. A little more water for this blue. Clean the brush. And then just clean up this blue on the face. So it's a little more opaque. If you look at the sample, it's a little more opaque than this one here. So we're just going to give it a little quick touch up. Okay, and then just working on the black again. I'm going to start at the bottom right corner where it's looking a little gray. Of course, if you have a black marker, you can always fill it in, but we have this shade of gray popping up because of the opacity, mixing it with the water. Just trying to pull the color and mixing it with the water to create a deeper hue. There we are. I'm just trying to get rid of those gray streaks, darken them up a bit with the black here. You just keep pulling that color across. And then just working our way up to the face a little bit more. And then we're going to take a quick break just to let the paint fully dry. We want to go over the edges here, including the face, with a more detailed marker tip or pen or ink. It just helps with creating the image when you have a pen or, excuse me, marker or alcohol marker or ink pen to go over the lines with. Sometimes when you have a paintbrush and try to draw a line, there's not as much control because of the bend of the bristles of the brush. So we'll go to using the markers, and the only reason why we want to wait till it dries a little bit is because when you put wet on top of wet, so the marker is already wet, and if you put it on top of a wet paper, the paper won't absorb the marker, and you will just wind up with a piece of paper that's too saturated that'll start tearing. So you definitely want to wait till this is a little bit dry. And again, we're just coming in and retracing all the steps here. Looking at the shade, I'm looking at the shade. I think it is looking great, way better than earlier. You don't have that gray look to it. It's definitely a black hue now. And I think that's about the time that we will start letting this dry. And then I just want to show you a technique on a piece of paper that is going to help when creating a straight line. So when creating a straight line with the marker, you're going to hold up the ruler and then trace with it leaned up against the marker. And you want to do that with the line being on the outside. So if your dominant hand is, you want it to the right. So we're going to let that dry a little bit. This is almost fully dry, so we'll go ahead and wait for that. That way, when I put my ruler down, I can just have it guide me through a nice straight line. But until then, I'm going to take a look at my picture, take a look at my sample picture, make a little bit of a fan if I need to, a makeshift fan, but this is our sample. So far, so good. We have our colors, we have our lines looking good. So now it's just defining everything and really making it look finished. I'm proud enough to hang up for American Heritage Month. Yeah, and another thing that you can see, I have it saturated, but if I tilt it, nothing is dripping down. So that's a good sign that I'm using a decent amount of water. I'm not using too much. And again, like I said, you can always have a blow dryer handy, depending on how much pigment. You can sometimes take a tissue too and blot an area that's super wet dry. And just for time's sake, I'm going to take a piece of paper to do that. So you can just work on the line. Sometimes when you're sketching, having a scrap paper so your hand doesn't get dirty on this area here. You can lean on the piece of paper and you won't get this area here dirty. Perfect. Okay. So now we're ready to draw a nice little straight line. So I'm going to pull this up here. I have this alcohol marker. It is a broad tip marker, and it comes with a fine tip as well. And I also have a retractable Sharpie. So I think I'm going to do the retractable Sharpie. And before you do any kind of drawing with a marker, you always want to test it out and make sure that there's still some ink left, because there's been plenty of times where I've had a marker and tested it out and it doesn't have enough ink to make the picture look good. So that is, this broad tip is a little more promising. So I'm going to put my ruler to the edge, but you can try your best to keep your hand straight. And the way you support your hand when you're drawing, you can lean your pinky on, or you can lean your wrist up against it. I'm with my arm against the edge of the table to give myself stability. And I'm going to just line up my ruler right up against my drawn line there and just pulled it across. And I'm going to redo it one more time and maybe go a tad slower. Just like so. Here we are. Okay, so I'm just going to start moving my page around. We're done with the watercolors. We can move that to the side. Just moving my page around just to make it good for me to draw a straight line. And again, I'm right-handed, so I'm trying to have the line to the right. And then trace. And we're just retracing over the drawn lines that you see here. Perfect. And again, to the right of my ruler, I'm going to place this down right up against the edge. And pull straight across like so. And lift this up. So there's a little black on there. I'm going to make sure that this cleaned off before I move on. This area here is a simple cut. And then this area here, I'm going to just use my ruler towards the bottom. Clean that area up. Move my page here. Line up the ruler. And clean that area up. And take the ruler once more. The line is to the right since I'm right-handed. And there is your other line. And then this is kind of looking a little curved to me, so I'm going to try to straighten it out just a little bit. Just to give it a more clean look. And then I want to retrace this curved line. So this is not a straight line, this is a curved line. So I have that retraced, and then I have this outer part of the hijab image that also gets a bit of a straight line. Excuse me, a traced line. So I'm going to slowly retrace and come around. With the Sharpie marker, just retracing that line that was initially drawn. Remember that it has a little bit of a curve. Perfect. And then, like I said, last but not least, we have our face. And again, I'm just going to give it another moment or two. This area where I'm going to be placing my hand might be a little wet. So if it does not dry in the next couple of seconds, I can always put a piece of paper so it doesn't transfer. But let's just give it one more moment or two to dry. Again, this is our sample. This is what we have so far. So far, so good. Just giving it another moment or so to dry. Okay, so I have my little scrap paper too. So I'm going to put that here so I don't put my hand on any of the wet paint. And then I'm just going to start tracing the sketch lines. So I'm going to start at the eyebrow area here and the eyebrow area here. And when you press your marker, just be mindful how hard you press it. The more softly you press it, the thinner the line. The harder you press it, the thicker the line. And this is a medium-sized line that it creates with this particular marker. So just be a little mindful of how hard you press. And this eye gets filled in there. Just continue tracing, and then this eye gets filled in here. Then we have these two straight lines atop the lip area. And then we go through the lip. And the only thing that doesn't get that extra bit of bold line is going to be this little part on the face. And in order for your picture to finally be complete, so this is our sample. This is what we have going on today. You want to finish your picture with your signature. And that's what makes you an official artist. So I would love to see what you guys came up with. If you used the same colors that I used, if you colored in all the squares you can. This is just the one that's inspired by the artist. And you can be as creative as you like. I'm just going to come back in here one moment and just notice that these lips were filled blue. So we want that filled in a little bit with some blue. We'll make that happen shortly. Do.
Erica,
Yes, ma'am.
look up. Gerard is showing you his picture.
I shall. Oh, very nicely done, Gerard. And if anybody else wants to show their work of art, I like that you made it very colorful. And this was a cool, nice design, right?
Very nice.
Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you learned something new. Happy Arab American Heritage Month. And you have just painted something inspired by the artist named Zughaib, Helen Zughaib. So thank you.